Hi everyone and welcome to another reading vlog. I have just finished wrapping up my last reading vlog, so I thought I might as well kick this one off while I've got everything set up. But as you've probably guessed from the title, in this reading vlog I am going to be reading books from my very first book haul. So the first book haul that I ever did on my channel was back in August or September 2020. It was around 2 months after I started my channel. There are 4 books from that original book haul that I haven't read yet, so that's what we're going to be doing in this vlog. I am a little bit nervous because obviously I filmed that video a long time ago, so my taste in books have changed quite a bit since then, but one of my goals for this year is to hold myself accountable. I want to make sure that I am reading the books that I set out to read and that books aren't coming onto my TBR and staying there for years and years. So I think it is about time that I read some of the books from that video. I will insert clips actually into this vlog so you can see, I guess, what I said about those books back then. I don't know, I'm gonna see how I can edit it all together, but basically the first book that I'm going to be reading for this vlog is Verity by Colleen Hoover. So I wasn't sure if I should include this book in this video because technically, you can probably see actually, this is a library book. I don't actually own this book anymore. I'd actually just downloaded it through Kindle Unlimited and it's not on KU anymore, so I don't have access to it that way. But I thought, you know what, clearly I did want to read it at that time, so let's just include it in the vlog anyway, especially because when I looked on my library app, I could get hold of it. So I've started this already. I'm about 35 pages in, and all I know about this book is that it's about an author who accepts a job ghostwriting for this other author. This other author is called Verity, and she was in an accident, which means that she can't finish this very popular series that she's been writing. So Verity's husband hires our main character to finish the job. I think it's classed as a romantic suspense, and I have been nervous about this book because I know that it's got a lot of hype on TikTok in particular. I've read a few Colleen Hoover books. I've read It Ends With Us and Regretting You, and I did really like them, so I don't know how I'm gonna feel about this book because I've not read this kind of book from Colleen Hoover before. The other 2 books that I've read from her have been like contemporaries, so yeah, wish me luck with this one. I've heard people either give it 5 stars or 1 star, so that's going to be interesting. I think my sister read this quite recently actually, and I think she gave it 5 stars, and we do tend to have similar taste in books. So yeah, I'm gonna go out this afternoon. I'm gonna pop to town, maybe sit in a coffee shop and read for a little while, and hopefully I can get through a good chunk of this because it's only, I think, around 300-ish pages, so it shouldn't take me that long to read. The other 3 books that are on my list for this vlog are The Green Mile by Stephen King, After the End by Clare Mackintosh, and also I Am Not Your Baby Mother by Candice Brathwaite, which I think I'm going to try and listen to on audiobook because my aim is to read all of these books this week. We'll see if that actually happens, but I know that in the past when I've read books by Stephen King in particular, I've read them quite quickly, and then After the End is a contemporary, which again I think I can read quite quickly, and then I Am Not Your Baby Mother on audiobook is gonna round off this vlog. So yeah, I can't actually remember where I got the inspiration for this vlog. If I do remember over the course of this week, then I will let you know, but I'm sure I've seen a few booktubers do similar vlogs to this, so this definitely isn't like an original idea, but I thought it would be an interesting experiment to see if I still like the books that I was interested in nearly 3 years ago. This is a psychological thriller about a woman who's a struggling author and she accepts a job ghostwriting for another author. This other author is called Verity. While this author is in Verity's office, she comes across a journal or a diary that basically starts to uncover some secrets about Verity's life, about her husband, and about their twin daughters that passed away. So I am now around 100 pages from the end of Verity, and I wanted to film an update now because there's a good chance I'm going to finish this this afternoon. I'm going to go to the gym now, but then when I get home, my plan is to finish this because I am not obsessed, but I'm addicted, and I need to know how it's going to end because a lot of people have told me that this has a very shocking ending, and I'm really intrigued what that's all about. I wouldn't say that I'm enjoying this. I feel like enjoy is the wrong word, but I am liking the thriller aspects. I really like the tension and the suspense. It's more the characters that I'm struggling with. I think the characters are very unlikable, but that actually is probably the point. I don't think I'm meant to like the characters. I think they're meant to be horrible people. So yeah, interested to see what I think of the end of this. I do have theories, but yeah, we're going to see if I'm right. I am having the worst day, and I'm not going to talk about it too much because it's probably not that interesting. I'm having problems with my car, basically. I had to take it in for its MOT this morning, and what is the one thing you don't want to happen when you have to take your car into the garage? The one thing you don't want to happen is for the car to not even move when you try and turn it on, and it was a big stress that I didn't need this Monday. But anyway, I have been quite productive reading wise over the last few days because I ended up finishing Verity yesterday afternoon. I have really mixed feelings about this. I genuinely don't know what to rate it because there were times where I was so angry at this book that I wanted to throw it across the room, but at the same time I couldn't put it down, and it's been a long time since I've picked up a book and I've wanted to finish it in one sitting. So yeah, I can see why some people have loved this and given it 5 stars, but I can also see why some people have given it 1 star. I think I mentioned at the start of this vlog that this is a romantic suspense. So you have this thriller plot, but then you also have this romance, and I hated the romance. I didn't like the characters, and I genuinely couldn't work out whether we were meant to root for these characters or were we meant to hate them, because I hated them. It's a shame because I did think that this was compulsively readable, and I did like the plot. I liked that we were following an author, and I liked that this was kind of a book within a book. I will say, in terms of trigger warnings, if you are in any way triggered by bad things happening to children, then I wouldn't recommend picking this up. In fact, I don't know who I would recommend this to. I think if you like books where the purpose is to shock you, maybe I would recommend this. The closest book that I can think of that I'd compare this to is Pretty Girls by Karen Slaughter, which I read quite recently, and I will say that Pretty Girls was a lot more graphic than this, but they're kind of similar in the sense that the purpose of them is to shock you. So yeah, if you liked that, or if you like books like that, then maybe give this a go, but I think I'm gonna give it like a 3, maybe a 3.5 stars. Definitely don't regret reading it because it's one of those books that I've seen around a lot. I think this came out in 2018, and I've seen so many people reading this, and everyone seems to talk about the ending to this and how there's so many twists, and now I know what happens in this book. My curiosity has been satisfied. I did actually quite like some of the twists towards the end. I had been spoiled for something in this, but actually when I started reading it, I realised that it wasn't actually that big of a deal what I knew, because there were so many twists in this that I didn't know everything, and there was some stuff that I didn't predict. So yeah, I'm gonna give this, I think, like a 3 or a 3.5, which I feel doesn't really do a good job of summarising how I thought about this book, because to me a 3-star rating is kind of in the middle. It means that I didn't have strong feelings about a book, but I had very strong feelings about this as I was reading. So yeah, that review probably wasn't very helpful, but I have now made a start on the next book that I'm reading for this vlog, which is After the End by Clare Mackintosh. I don't think I've ever read any books by Clare Mackintosh, but from what I understand, she's more well known as a thriller author, whereas this is contemporary fiction. So I'm about a third of the way through this now, and and I can remember when I bought this, it was 99p on Kindle, and I had it in my mind that I was going to read it at some point because a lot of people had recommended this to me and said that it was heartbreaking but really well written, and so far I can confirm it's heartbreaking, but I do think so far it has been well written. It's basically about this couple whose son is around 2 or 3 years old, and he was diagnosed with a brain tumour. So over the last few months they've spent a lot of time in hospital. However, the doctors have just told this couple that their son is terminal, so it's about them trying to decide what to do next, whether they should continue with treatment or whether they should stop treatment. I think I actually heard that the author has written from her own experience, and I have a feeling that it's going to make me cry, so I'm going to read some more tonight, and then hopefully I can update you once I'm past the halfway point. It's set in the Midlands though, which I wasn't expecting, so I recognise quite a lot of the place names. I think the couple live in Birmingham, but they've mentioned a few other places nearby, so yeah, that's been very interesting. I don't often read books that are set around where I live. So I am now around halfway through After the End by Clare Mackintosh, and I'm still really liking this, but I don't feel like I have much else to say about it because it's not doing anything other than what I was expecting it to do. It's a very sad story, and even though I don't have kids and I can't even imagine how it must feel to be in the position that the main characters are in, I still have empathy, and so there was one moment actually that made me cry, which I wasn't expecting. Like, I knew that this was going to be a sad book, but the moment that made me cry wasn't what I was expecting to make me cry. Basically, the first half has introduced us to the characters and the situation, and it's led up to this court case, and I think the second half is going to deal with the outcome of the court case. I'm really interested to see what direction this goes in because it's done something that I wasn't expecting. I wouldn't call it a twist exactly, but yeah, I'm really interested to see what happens in this second half. I have a feeling that I'm gonna like the second half more than the first half. I don't think I'm gonna do any more updates now until I finish the book because it's reading very quickly, it's very fast paced, and I will say that at times the writing feels a little distant and I want it to go a little bit deeper into the emotions, but we'll see if that comes in this second half. So I have now finished After the End by Clare Mackintosh, and I think I'm going with a 4-star rating for this. I was right in that I preferred the second half more than the first half, which seems to be the unpopular opinion. I was looking through some Goodreads reviews and it seems like more people preferred the first half, and I can see why. The writing technique that the author uses in the second half I think is quite Marmite. It's something that I really like, but I can also understand why some people didn't like it because it did feel a little bit confusing at times. This whole book really focuses on the relationship between this couple, and I did think that it was done well. I also really appreciated the author's note at the end where the author talks about why she wanted to write this book because it is very different from the other books that she's written. The only thing I struggled with was I didn't quite understand what point the author was trying to get across, but I think I've come to the conclusion that she wasn't really trying to make a point with this book. I think this was just a book that she felt like she needed to write, and I think that if you like really sad realistic fiction then I would recommend it. I think it was worth a read, so yeah, like I said, I'm gonna give it 4 stars, and I have now made a star on the next book that I'm reading for this vlog, which is The Green Mile by Stephen King. I read quite a lot of Stephen King books when I was kind of in my late teens, but it's got to have been about 10 years since I last picked up a Stephen King book. I think this was published in the 1990s, but it's set in the 1930s, and it follows a superintendent of this prison wing which houses people who have been given the death penalty. There's also this supernatural element. I don't know if supernatural is the right word, but this new prisoner is brought to the wing. It seems like this prisoner might have some kind of magical power or superhuman powers. Really interested to see what I think of this, because I don't hear many people recommending this. When people recommend Stephen King books, this is one that I don't hear a lot about. So yeah, interested to see what I think of it. It has been a really long time since I watched the film for this, but I can remember liking it, so I'm interested to see how this compares. I might rewatch the film actually once I finish this. I am just about to head into town to get my hair cut, but I wanted to quickly update the vlog first with my thoughts on The Green Mile, because I'm now around halfway through this, I'd say. I'm listening to the audiobook while I read physically with my eyes, and I'm finding actually that's really helping me to stay focused, because one thing I've noticed about Stephen King's writing is that he likes to waffle. The way that this book is told, it's written almost like a memoir where this main character is narrating his time working at this prison, and it's not a linear timeline, so every so often I'll be a little bit confused because it's quite clear that the main character hasn't started at the beginning. He's almost started in the middle, and then he'll reference something that's going to happen later on or that's already happened. And so yeah, it took me a little while to get used to, especially because this is quite slow and it's very character driven. But yeah, so far I'm liking it. It's given me solid 4-star feelings. I don't know, it might end up being a 5 stars. I also didn't realise, but I think this was originally published as a series of novellas because it's split into 6 parts, and I think I saw on Goodreads someone mentioned, or maybe the description talked about this, but I think that Stephen King caught on that people were skipping to the end of his books before reading the whole thing, and so he kind of, yeah, decided to publish this in 6 parts so that people couldn't do that. But yeah, so far I'm liking it. Some of the language is a little outdated, and I always find this when I pick up books that were published in the 80s or 90s, that some of the language is quite jarring. I'm also starting to notice a pattern or a theme with the books that I'm picking up for this vlog, because all of the books that I've read so far either have darker themes or they're emotionally intense. And I think it kind of makes sense that books like that stay on my TBR for longer, because I have to be in the right mood to want to read them. Like, if I know that a book is a lot lighter, then I'm going to be more likely to pick that up because I know that it's not going to drain me. Not that these books are draining me, I think it's just that I don't ever feel like I'm in the mood to read darker books until I actually start reading them. I completely forgot to mention as well, my car is absolutely fine. I took it to the garage earlier this week. I think I mentioned all of the drama on Monday, but yeah, it actually passed its MOT, which I wasn't expecting, so I am going to be driving it tomorrow. I drove it to work on Wednesday, and again, it was absolutely fine, but I'm going out for breakfast in Stratford with my mum and my sister tomorrow, so let's hope that the car can get me there all right, because I was very, very stressed earlier this week. Hello, hello, hello. It is now Saturday evening and I have just finished The Green Mile by Stephen King. I haven't ran this through Corpal yet, so I don't know what I'm going to rate this. It's a difficult one because there were some parts that I liked, but also there were some parts in this that made me feel really uncomfortable, and I feel like that's kind of the point. Like, this is a horror, but it's a horror in the sense that it does make you feel uncomfortable rather than it scares you. Some of the language is very crude and explicit, and some of the language is really outdated. I kind of expected that going into it. Like, when I pick up an older book, I go into it expecting there to be outdated language, and and possibly racism, homophobia and sexism. So obviously that bothers me, even though I do know to expect it, unfortunately, going in. I think that's why I find it hard to review older books like this, and I never feel like I can recommend them. I mean, I feel like I don't really need to recommend Stephen King. Like, Stephen King is clearly a very popular author, so I don't feel the need to go out of my way to recommend his books because people are going to pick them up regardless of what me or anyone else says. I do find it interesting reading older books, and I especially find it interesting reading older books that are written by popular authors because I like to try and understand why they're popular, and I do see it with this. One of the main criticisms that I've seen on Goodreads is people saying that it's boring and it's slow, and I feel like that's kind of fair because it is quite slow, but also I think it was meant to be quite slow and it was meant to be more about the atmosphere and the characters. So yeah, haven't decided what I'm gonna give this as a final rating, but I'm glad that I finally read it because it has been on my TBR for a really long time. Can't remember if I gave content warnings for this, but it's very crude and overly descriptive at times, so just something to bear in mind if you are thinking about picking this up. But I am now gonna take a break, I think, because I've been reading for most of the day, so I'm gonna get myself some food and then get an early night because I've got to get up quite early to drive to Stratford in the morning. But my plan is to start listening to I'm Not Your Baby Mother on the way there because that's the final book that I need to read for this vlog. From what I understand, this is a memoir about what it's like to be a black mother in Britain today. Good afternoon. It is now Sunday and I am struggling today. I don't know what happened yesterday. I think I had too much caffeine, but for some reason I couldn't sleep at all last night. I mean, I think I eventually drifted off around 3 o'clock, maybe 3:30, which wasn't great considering I had to be up quite early to go for breakfast with my mum and my sister. So yeah, I got home and pretty much just crashed. So I think I'm going to spend the rest of this afternoon and evening just relaxing and trying to get some sleep, but also I don't want to sleep too quickly because then I won't sleep tonight. I might go to the gym actually in a bit if I can force myself, but I wanted to update this vlog and finish off this vlog actually because I have now finished I Am Not Your Baby Mother by Candice Brathwaite, and I really liked this. I'm really glad that I've finally read it because I was really interested in it when it first came out. Candice, for anyone who doesn't know, is a blogger. She's most well known for parenting content, and she started a platform a few years ago because she noticed at the time the UK mommy blogger community was very heavily dominated by white women, and she never saw herself represented online. So this is kind of a memoir about her experience of being a black British mother, and it's only short. I think it's around 240 pages. The audiobook was around 3 hours long, but I was listening on 2 times speed. And yeah, I thought it was very concise, but really informative and insightful. Throughout the book, she draws a lot on her own experience, but also there's data and statistics which kind of back up what she's saying. And I thought that structure worked really well. I thought it was very well balanced, and yeah, there were some chapters in particular that were really heartbreaking and frustrating to read. Like, there was one point where she was talking about when she was giving birth and how after the birth she felt like something was wrong, and she was reaching out to the doctors and healthcare professionals and saying to them something is wrong, but she was consistently ignored and overlooked, and she ended up getting sepsis, which is obviously not great. It can be life-threatening. She also talked a little bit about when she started posting on Instagram and how she was treated within that community, and I just found it really, really interesting. I think if you are in any way interested in reading a book about parenting that's told from the perspective of a Black British mother, then I would really recommend this. I feel like I got a lot out of it. I'm not a parent, but I still found it really, really interesting. In terms of this week though, I feel like this has been a reasonably successful experiment because I've given all of these books a decent rating. I haven't rated I Am Not Your Baby Mother because I find it difficult to rate non-fiction anyway. I mean, I think if I was to give it a star rating, I'd give it 5 stars because I don't have anything negative to say about it. But then what were the other books that I read this week? Verity, I gave 3 stars, but it wasn't like a disappointing 3 stars. It was more of a, I enjoyed that, I think, 3 stars. It was very entertaining and I'm glad that I read it. I'm glad that I read all of these books, to be fair. After the end, I gave 4 stars, and then The Green Mile, I think I'm going to give 4 stars as well. So yeah, I feel like this has been a good reading week. I've read quite a lot, which is, you know, always good. I've read more than I have all month, to be fair. I think just because I had a lot of enthusiasm for this vlog. Let me know in the comments actually, what are the oldest books currently on your TBR? Because I have some books on my Kindle that have been on there for like 6, 7 years since I first bought my Kindle, and I was really excited about them when I first bought them, but it's been so long now and my reading taste has changed so much that I think I'm a little bit scared to pick them up. But yeah, let me know, what do you do if a book sits on your TBR for a few years? Do you just kind of ignore it, or do you think to yourself that you'll read it eventually? Let me know what you do, but I am going to wrap things up here. Thanks again for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and click subscribe if you would like to see more videos from me. But otherwise, I will see you next time. Bye.